Welcome everyone to our first time traveler workshop. My name is Ana Arellano and I am a study abroad advisor here at the UCLA International Education Office. Our first time traveler webinar today is dedicated specifically for students who have no travel experience or very minimal travel experience. We're here to help you prepare you for your travel internationally or domestically, just any kind of process of helping you pre-departure to make sure that all runs smoothly. So we do have quite a handful of items to discuss today. As you can see, we have travel documents that we will be discussing, tips on how to find and book flights. We will discuss luggage and packing, currency exchange, the departure process from start to finish, including customs and border protection, jet lag, how to adjust to life and culture outside of the United States, as well as this notion of American abroad. And we will conclude with the Q&A. So it is a lot of information. I do hope that I make it as digestible as possible. Like I mentioned, if you have any questions at any time, please feel free to use the Q&A chat. Perfect. So we'll begin specifically talking about travel documents. So when it comes to travel, and whether it's domestically or internationally, there are specific documents that you require in order to successfully make it to your destination. These requirements include the real ID, a passport, a visa, or a residence permit. A real ID provides citizens, U.S. citizens with access to any kind of federal facility. So this does include an airplane. A real ID is generally valid for as long as a state ID or driver's license is valid. So it does depend on which state, your home state, whether it be California or Arizona. A passport, it certifies your identity, who you are, and your citizenship. This allows you to travel to and from foreign countries. Generally, a passport is valid for up to 10 years. Next, we have a visa. A visa allows non-citizens to enter a country, and it also allows you to reside in that respective foreign country for a specific amount of time. There are many types of visas. They can be a tourist visa, they can be a student visa, work visa, or volunteer visas. How long a visa is valid for really depends on the purpose of the visa and where you're traveling to, as well as where you're traveling from. So there is a lot of dates that can be valid to and from. Similarly, we have a residence permit. A residence permit allows non-citizens to reside in a specific country, also for a specific amount of time. So depending where you're traveling to and for what purpose, this will determine how long your residence permit will be valid for, very similar to the visa. And while they may sound very similar, a permit provides your immigration status while you're physically in the foreign country, versus the visa provides your immigration status when you are outside of the country of where you plan to go. So very similar, they do have their key differences. So which one will you need? It really depends on where you're going to and your purpose of travel. So if you plan to travel internationally outside of the US, you will be required to have a passport. In some cases, depending on where you're going and the purpose, you may also require a passport and a residence permit or a visa. If this applies to your study abroad program, whether it be UCLA Travel Study, Global Studies, Global Internship, or UCEAP, you would receive further information from your study abroad program coordinator. And most actually already have done so. So if you have questions about whether your program requires a residence permit or a visa, please make sure you check in with that respective department. For domestic travel, so traveling domestically means you're traveling from state to state within the US. You do not require a passport, though you can use a passport to travel. In other cases, you would require a state ID or a driver's license. This would suffice. That way you don't carry your passport. Though beginning May of next year, you will be requiring that real ID for all domestic travel. So once that real ID comes into effect, you will no longer be able to use that state ID or the driver's license. But for a time today, you may use a state ID or a driver's license or a passport to travel from state to state within the US. We have some really quick information on how to obtain these travel documents. I'm going to briefly just browse through them. I'm hoping that by this time, most of you are already in the process, if not have already obtained a passport or any kind of documents for your study abroad program. That is the reason why I will kind of skim through it. Of course, if you have any other questions or something that you wanted me to dive in a little bit further, please let me know or connect with me afterwards. I don't want to spend too much time on this just because we have a lot of other information. But very quickly, how do you obtain a Real ID, just because this will come into handy next year, you first want to visit dhs.gov/Real ID. You will need to have specific documents before you begin your application. This would require your proof of identity. Your identity must have your full legal name as well as your date of birth. You would be required to have your social security on hand and any two proofs of residency. This can include, for example, a water bill. This can include a power bill, anything that proves that you live here. Once you gather these documents, you want to go to the DMV office or call ahead to schedule your appointment, and they will able to there take your photo ID and scan everything in order for you to have that real ID. Typically, the processing times is anywhere between 2 to 6 weeks, though of course delays are currently occurring. So there can be some either longer period of 6 weeks. So just to keep that in mind. How to obtain a passport, very similar to the Real ID. There are documents that you need to obtain beforehand. This includes a passport application form. You can obtain this form on travel.state.gov. On this website is also where you will be able to find local agencies of being able to submit these documents. Other documents that you will need are your proof of US citizenship, proof of identity, so similar where you have your full legal name and your date of birth. You need 2 headshots. Those headshots you can take anywhere, for example, at a CVS, or anywhere that can gather those passport specific photos. And you will also need to have your social security. Once you have all this information, you go to that travel.state.gov website, find a local agency, and that PDF file that I will be sending to you after this presentation, there will be a sheet with local agencies within the UCLA Westwood area. So we do have that for you. There's also a short link. It's about 4 or 5 minutes on bit.ly/how-to-passport. It's a very brief video provided by another UC campus on quick steps on how to obtain a passport if you haven't begun that process already. On the topic of passports, I do want to make a quick note. There are 2 such things as a passport and a passport card. A passport, otherwise known as a passport book, is what we more generally see, and this is used for all international and domestic travel. That includes by airfare, that includes by boat, or that includes by car and land. There's also the passport card. This card cannot be used for international travel. It can only be used if you're entering the United States by sea or by land. And that includes from regions of Canada, Mexico, Caribbean, and Bermuda. So as you can see, you cannot use a passport card to travel on an airplane to go to Spain, to and from Spain, for example. So you must use that passport book. On how to apply for a visa and residence permit, it really depends on the country that you are planning to visit. They all have their own application requirements. They all have their own processing time. So unfortunately, there's no general one time. As mentioned previously, if your program does require a visa or a residence permit, they will be providing you more information on how to obtain that visa residence permit or how to obtain further information to obtain that permit. So all information will be provided by your study abroad program coordinators. Now we'll speak about finding and booking flights. I'm sure most of us are now in the process of finding that flight and trying to get the best deal. So I think this is perfect timing, actually. First, I want to begin with possible search engines. Very popular engines are Kayak and Google Flights. I myself use Google Flights, although you can also purchase or search through flights through individual airlines. The reason I would suggest search engines like Kayak or Google Flights is because you get all available flights within the certain time frame that you're searching for, and they provide you the results from the cheapest to the most expensive. Of course, we'll go over kind of what makes a flight perhaps the cheapest, which is the most expensive, but Google Flights and Kayak do give you that option to compare and contrast across best prices, different airlines. There is also a website or Student Universe that provides discounts for student travelers. If you want to definitely check that out, there are some discounts for student travelers. So good engines to check out. When it comes to booking, one thing I do want to emphasize or provide you a tip on is specifically timing. So you do want to make sure first and foremost that you are following the arrival instructions provided by your program coordinators. For UCLA Travel Study, Global Studies, and Global Internships, all those arrival instructions are provided on your registration portal. For UC-EAP students, those are located on your UC-EAP portal. Please make sure you are not booking flights before those arrival instructions. Sometimes you are asked to arrive to specific specific airlines or specific airports, I'm sorry. And then some other programs require you not to have a layover or a stop at a different airport due to certain visa or resident permit restrictions. So it's very important that you have that on hand before booking your flights. Another thing, when you are booking your flights, most airlines have a 24-hour window where you can change or cancel your flight. Generally, students, once they book their flight, you don't need to change it. But in the event that you do, make sure you're wary of that window. Changing your flight after those 24 hours can result in a hefty fee. So you want to make sure that if you do need to make any changes, it's within that 24-hour window, where generally, for the most part, they may be free of cost. The last thing, when you are looking into flights, you want to make sure that you're verifying the AM and PM. That includes AM and PM of departing and arriving at your destination. That's very important, especially when it comes to arriving within those arrival instructions or any kind of jet lag that you maybe have. So with that in mind, we're going to go ahead and speak a little bit more about what you may be seeing when it comes to purchasing flights. So the first and foremost is layovers. So a layover is any stop or stops that you have prior to getting to your destination. Often layovers, as we can see on screen, it's labeled as the cheapest flights. And the reason is because you see that you have a longer period of time of travel. So we see here that this layover is the cheapest, but we have a +2, and we have something that let us know that this flight itself between 7:40 p.m. and 4:30 p.m. would take a total of 35 hours before you connect to your next flight, which begins at 9 a.m. So it's always very important to kind of check out these little details, and I'll go ahead and break down a little bit more about what this flight exactly entails. So this is the exact same flight we had previously. I'm just breaking it down so you can see a little bit more of the details of what it explains. So anytime you see a +1 or a +2, this will add a significant amount of time in your travel. This means that you're adding 1 day or you're adding 2 days to your travel. So in this case, we were adding 2 days because you have a layover of 23 hours, close to 24 hours, a full day in London. After you arrive in London on November 5th, you will not be boarding until the very next day, November 6th at 1:25 p.m. So this, although it is the cheapest flight, it's letting us know congratulations, unless you're willing to have that layover for 24 hours and kind of cut down some time that you may have in your destination. The cheapest flight with the layovers may not always be the best idea. Though, of course, layovers can vary. They can be anywhere from 45 minutes. They can be anywhere, as we can see here, from 2 to 3 days. So layovers sometimes may be too good to be true. So now, speaking a little bit more about good deals versus bad deals. Economy tickets are usually the default options. That's usually, as I always fly, just default. It is cheapest one option as well, but you also can include different amenities to your flight. So for example, you can choose a better seat. You can be first class, or you can be a little bit where you have more leg room. You can purchase ticket insurance where it makes it refundable, or you're able to make changes at any time. And all these add-ons will increase the total price of your tickets. When you are purchasing tickets, you also want to check any kind of amenities that are included. So for example, if you're having a long flight, should you expect breakfast, lunch, and dinner, or at least one meal throughout your flight, or you have to be a different purchase in the flight? Do you have Wi-Fi? Is that free of charge? Is that an additional thing that you have to purchase during your flight? Is there any luggage restrictions? Are you allowed a free carry-on and a free checked-in luggage, or is that additional cost? And I'll speak a little bit more about what those luggage differences are later in this presentation. But just some things to be wary of. I'm going to go back 2 slides, and that's to show you. Here's where we're also able to see at a quick glance the luggage restrictions. So here we see that we're able to have 1 free carry-on, and we have no checked-in luggage included in this total price ticket. So that means that if I wanted to check in a luggage, I would need to pay additional. So just some things to keep in mind with something that could make a good deal versus a bad deal. A few other things is that you do want to book as early as possible. I know that in some cases arrival instructions are not available just yet, but once you do receive those arrival instructions, you want to make sure you're booking sooner than later. The closer you book to your departure date, the more expensive the flight may be, or the flight ticket may be. As mentioned earlier, you want to pay attention to your time of arrival. Are you okay arriving in the middle of the night versus the afternoon? So for example, if you arrive in the middle of the night, transportation at your destination may be limited, or are you okay traveling at that time? Will you be by yourself? Are you okay with landing in the middle of the night where there may be not any restaurants or any stores open where you can have a little snack, versus in the afternoon where there's more transportation options where you're able to kind of more or less maneuver because when there is deadline, there's people for you to ask help for. So some things to kind of keep in mind. So last thing when you are purchasing your ticket is that after you finalize that ticket, you want to make sure you have a confirmation code or a record locator. If you do not receive the confirmation code via email, that may be a sign of worry that you may not have a ticket. This is mainly for flights that are not purchased directly from the airline. So for example, Google flights, you want to make sure that you do have that confirmation code to make sure that you do have that flight. So there's a lot of information for booking and searching for and booking for flights, but I do hope that was helpful. Now we're going to go ahead and speak a little bit more about luggage and packing. So when it comes to traveling both internationally and domestically, there are 3 general types of luggage that someone can take with them, and that includes to anywhere in their destination. The first item we have is a personal item. We have a carry-on, and we have a checked-in luggage. So what exactly is the difference between any of these 3? So a personal item is generally a backpack, a purse, or a briefcase, but this item must fit underneath the seat in front of you. Because it must fit underneath the seat in front of you, it does have a size restriction. Anything that does not fit in that seat will be transferred over to the next available luggage. So in this case, for example, if your purse does not fit in that seat in front of you, it will be then counted as your carry-on. And that's important to note if you have carry-on restrictions or luggage restrictions. A carry-on is a small suitcase. It could be a duffel bag. It could be any medium-sized bag that fits in your overhead bin. The overhead bin is the storage above your seat of where you will be seated. So on the airplane, you will have access to both the personal items and the carry-on. The carry-on, and similarly to the personal item, does have a size restriction. I do want to emphasize that for the carry-on, some airlines do tend to be more strict than others. So I do want to make sure that you're following those dimensions. You can find those dimensions for specific airlines on their website or perhaps on that site where you purchase your tickets. In some cases, once you get to before you board the plane, some airline representatives make you fit or make you measure your carry-on size to make sure that it's within their dimensions. If it's not, they will then transfer it to a checked baggage, which means there's another price included. So making sure you're looking into those dimensions before packing on that carry-on. Finally, we have our checked baggage. This is anywhere from a medium to a large suitcase, and this is stored on the aircraft. So you do not have access to this checked baggage during your flight. The checked baggage, it has a weight restriction of 50 pounds. Anything that surpasses 50 pounds can be classified as an oversized or overweight item. So an overweight item, like I mentioned, is anything that exceeds 50 pounds or 23 kilograms. If by any chance you have a luggage that exceeds those 50 pounds, there are a couple of options that you can take. First and foremost, you can remove items from your luggage, provide them to a relative, a friend that's with you to take them home. That way you're able to meet that 50-pound requirement. That actually happened to myself when I studied abroad. I was way over the limit. I kind of just threw on sweaters to my family member for them to take home. So that's one of the options. Another option you have is to pay an additional fee just to continue with that overweight luggage. Not all airlines allow overweight luggage, so just make sure that if you do want to continue, that you verify that that is allowed. And in other cases, if you kind of you don't want to pay, but you don't want to remove items, there may be an alternative. I cannot guarantee it, but you can always speak with an airline representative to see what other options you may have. Similarly, we do have what's called an oversized item. This is generally items that do not fit that normal suitcase range. So for example, if you're going to Australia and you want to take your surfboard to roll the waves, that's something that you can take, and that will be classified as an oversized item. Sometimes strollers count as an oversized item as well. In some cases, oversized items are not associated with any extra fees. In other cases, they are. It really depends on the airline. So definitely check in with the airline representative to see if that would be if that would have an additional charge. If you are planning to take an oversized item, call in advance before you get to the airport. That way you kind of more or less know what to expect. And of course, for any of these items, you always want to speak to an airline representative to see if there's any other policies that you should be aware of, or like I mentioned, if there's any fees that are associated with these. So now we have liquids and gels. So there are protocols for traveling with liquids and gels. So if you plan to take any liquids or gels on your carry-on, so on the airplane with you, all items have to be 3.4 ounces or less, and all of these items must fit in a quart-sized bag. So any liquids or gels surpassing that 3.4 ounces limit, they can't be thrown away, or the security officer may ask you to empty it until it meets that 3.4 requirement. So I want to make sure that none of your items are thrown away. So make sure you're making that 3.4 limits. Those quart-sized bags, they're also known as toiletry bags, and you can find some empty bottles and a pre-made toiletry bag at stores like CVS, Target. So they're all empty where you can simply fill yourself in, and they do meet that 3.4 ounce limit. So CVS, Target, Walgreens, you can find these empty containers to take with you. If you plan to travel with liquids or gels that are more than 3.4 ounces, that is allowed. However, you want to have them in your checked bag, so things that are stored onto the aircraft. If you do plan to take, for example, your entire shampoo bottle that's more than 3.4 ounces, if you plan to do so, I highly encourage you to place them into, for example, a gallon Ziploc bag or a plastic bag, because in your check bag, they are receptive to that air pressure once it's in the airplane. So it can possibly cause those items to burst or simply spill. So you want to make sure that your belongings are nice and clean and there's no spillage. So because of that, if you are taking any liquids or gels, I just simply would recommend placing them in a bag where all your other belongings are safe throughout your travel. So a couple of things for your luggage. These are not required in any way, but there are some possible ways to protect your luggage, whether that be from theft or damaged. The first and foremost is having a distinct item, whether that be a suitcase that instead of black, it has a zebra print, or if it's a black suitcase, having a red ribbon or a colorful yarn or a big sticker that says property of Anna. And this is simply to make your luggage easier to spot when it's on the carousel once you have received it after check-in. I'll speak a little bit more about that afterwards, but it's just so able to see that that's your luggage and it belongs to you and no one else, just in case anyone accidentally grabs it, you know, hey, that's mine. Another way to protect your luggage is through locks. This can prevent any kind of theft, though rare if it does happen on occasion. So for locks, if you are planning to get one, make sure that they are TSA approved. And a TSA approved lock allows the TSA agent or the security officers to open and using a master lock. If their master lock does not open this lock, that they will need to break into it. And essentially, they will not be replacing that lock. So just make sure that it is TSA approved. Finally, we have our plastic wrap. This can avoid any kind of scratches on your suitcase, any kind of tears. It can protect it from bad weather. So for example, heavy rain, snow, getting to a destination, or as well as thieves. Plastic wrap, you can purchase it on your own and you can wrap it all together. Or there are also airport stations where they plastically wrap it for you. So that is available. Just another thing, similarly to the locks, TSA officers can unwrap this if they find it necessary, though unusual. It can happen, and they will not rewrap your luggage for you. So it's an option, but just to be wary that it may be taken off by TSA officers if deemed necessary. So just my own personal recommendations that I have for you. Anytime that you are traveling and you have a travel documents, which is of course anytime you're traveling, I highly encourage you to have these at easier access, whether that's in your purse as your personal item or in your carry-on. That includes your passport, your boarding pass, your visa. These are all documents that you will be required to show at some point during your travel. And it'd be easier if you have this exactly, for example, in your purse, in your backpack, and your carry-on, versus in your checked-in luggage when you don't have access to those and you cannot move forward with your travel. If you travel with, if you have a long flight, or even if it's a short flight, I would strongly encourage you to have your phone charger, your phone, any kind of prescribed medications if you do have any, having those as well, your carry-on or your personal item. While I would encourage water, I would more encourage a water bottle. You are not allowed to pass TSA, and I'll explain a little bit more further with actual water. So you will need to have a water bottle and you can refill that afterwards. But having those items easier access would be just more make your travel go smoother. I would also recommend a change of clothes or two. In certain circumstances, your checked-in luggage may be lost or it may not arrive at your destination with you. It can arrive at a later date due to some kind of conflicts within the airlines. So it's always easier to have a change of clothes or two in the event that that happens. Or of course, if you just feel comfortable changing to a different outfit after a 23-hour flight, for example. So just these are things that I would personally recommend having easier access on your personal item or your carry-on. I would also recommend leaving extra space in your luggage. You will likely return with souvenirs, whether they be for yourself or your friends. So it's easier to store them in your luggage as opposed to having to have them travel or sent before you arrive. A tip for this, I know I'm an overpacker myself. So a tip for this is that if you see something and you say, well, I might wear it or I can use this, then generally you may not need it. So it's best to just leave that behind and that will save you space for those souvenirs. I say this because when I came back from abroad, I had to ship a box from the Netherlands to the United States in order for me to surpass with my check-in luggage. So that was not very smart of myself, but that's because I overpacked. So I'm hoping that I can save that money because it was expensive. I'm hoping I can save that money to you. So now I'll be speaking a little bit more about currency exchange. Currency exchange is a trading of one currency for another. So when we talk about exchange rates, we're talking about how much of one currency, for example, how much of one US dollar would you receive in Mexican pesos. xe.com has a rate calculator that lets you know the current value of one currency over another. So for example, here we have an example of that one US dollar equals 76 Indian rupee. So what exactly does it mean that one US dollar equals 76 Indian rupee? So I have a quick example of how much did I spend. So for example, let's say you go abroad, you're at a local street market and you pay 152 for your total meal. So how much US money did you really spend? So if we know that 76 Indian rupees, approximately one US dollar, we divide 152 by the 76, and that lets us know that we spent approximately 2 US dollars on our meal. So being able to have these calculations will make your spending easier or broad, and it may actually help you save some money as well. I just really want to emphasize that don't be fooled by the higher number, the 152, thinking that's much more expensive, because as you can see, it's 2 US dollars. So you want to make sure that you're always just checking that exchange rate, and it does constantly change. So keeping that on hand, it's a good way to save money. And here's just another example of how 1 US dollar equals approximately 104 yen. 104 sounds like a lot, but as we can see, it's 1 US dollar. So always keeping that in mind when you are making purchases. So where can you exchange your currency? It can be exchanged in many places, and that includes in LA before you depart, as well as when you are abroad. So you can begin in exchanging your international currency at an ATM. This can be while you are abroad. It's very quick, it's very easy, though in some cases, there are some high fees that are associated. Your bank implements these fees, so it can be a little bit more expensive to do so. But of course, it's much easier. It's there in the spot. If you do plan to use a debit or credit card abroad to use this ATM, you do want to make sure you are notifying your bank that you will be abroad. If, for example, you are in Spain and you withdraw some money, your bank, or you attempt to withdraw some money, your bank may suspect some fraudulent activity and they may freeze your account, meaning that you have no more access to money. So this is why it's very important to let them know ahead of time that you do plan to travel so they don't freeze your card. You also can exchange at a bank or a credit union. This is a good way to kind of have cash once you are already there, to have money on hand beforehand. In some cases, you do need to plan beforehand. Some banks or some credit unions don't have that exchange or that currency you're looking for on hand, so they may need to pre-order that. So it's a good thing if you are planning to do the withdrawal from a bank or credit union, and you do plan ahead. Finally, there is an option for an exchange kiosk. These exchange kiosks are very conveniently located. So for example, they're at an airport or any kind of travel hub where you may purchase airline tickets as well. The thing with the exchange kiosks is they often have the worst fees, meaning you're getting less money for your buck. So it's a pro, it's there, it's convenient, but it may often cases you may be losing some money. So just something to be wary of. So now we spoke a little bit how to prepare for your departure. So now once we booked our flight, we are packed up, how do we actually begin this departure process? So it is a multi-step process. There's a lot that goes in within just the pre-departure itself. That includes checking in, that includes your baggage check, that includes security, the boarding gate, and as well as boarding your flight. So we're going to go ahead and break it down a little bit between each step. So first and foremost is that we're checking in for your flight. This is something that you always do before any flight, whether it's domestically or internationally. And this is letting your flight know, hey, I'm here, I plan to board this flight, and this is how many baggage I plan to take with me. This process can begin 24 hours prior to your flight time. So oftentimes within those 24 hours where you purchased your ticket, you receive an email confirmation saying, hey, we're ready for online check-in if you're interested in doing so. So you can do this online if you wish to do so, or you can do it the day of. Once you get there for your day of your flight. Just a quick tip, for the week leading up to your flight, you do want to make sure that you're consistently checking your emails. There can be some flight changes, there can be some flight updates, so you want to make sure that you're consistently checking that to make sure that you're up to date on your flight information. So when you're checking in for your flight, you let them know, hey, I plan to board this flight. You will also receive your boarding pass. This is your ticket that allows you access to enter the airplane and have your seat. Without this boarding pass, you cannot pass through security. You cannot board the flight, meaning you will not get to your destination. So if you check in online, you will receive your boarding pass digitally. Sometimes they give you a QR code. Other times they give you the option to print as well. I always recommend having both the printed version as well as the online version or a screenshot of that. I don't rely on the Wi-Fi, don't rely on data. So you want to make sure you always have some kind of solidified boarding pass with you. So like I mentioned, you can print it out at home, or you can also print it out at the kiosk the day of. So how to check in if your luggage, if you do have that with you. Remember, checking in luggage is an item that's stored on the aircraft and you do not have access to the day of. So there's two different ways. You can do it via the airline counter. You would wait in line for that respective associate to help you. They will scan your boarding pass, they will view your passport, and they will have you place your luggage on a scale, making sure it meets that 50-pound limit. And they will then provide you with the sticker, which is a tracking number for your luggage. Making sure you hold on to the sticker in the event that your luggage doesn't make it to your destination or gets lost in transit, there's some kind of damage, you know what to report for. There's also the option for self-service kiosk, similar to where you would find that boarding pass. You would scan the boarding pass, you would scan your passport, you would enter your confirmation number for your boarding pass. It's also going to ask you a series of questions. So for example, do you have any lighters? Do you have any hazardous items, any kind of liquids? Once that checklist is cleared, they will provide you the luggage tag. You would place that sticker on your luggage. They would provide you with that confirmation number, that tracking number that I mentioned. And then you would drop it off with the airline representative. They may possibly weigh it one more time to make sure that you were in line, that it's within that 50-pound limit, but they will take it from there. So self-kiosk or airline counter, either option works on how to check in that luggage. So I keep saying airline representative, go to the airline kiosk, but I wasn't explicitly clear on where you should go. So airports are divided into sections based on the airline. So these are called terminals. So these terminals are often given, like I mentioned, for specific airlines. And these terminals is where you would find that airline representative or more information on how to check in your luggage or how to find that boarding pass. So making sure that you know your terminal before you get to the airport. So for example, at LAX, there's 7 terminals, 8 including the international Tom Brady terminal. So you want to make sure that you know where you're going before you get to the airport. Last thing, before you're going to the airport, you want to make sure you're giving yourself plenty of time. More is always better than less. You do not want to be in a rush. If you are traveling internationally, you want to make sure that you arrive 3 hours prior. This gives you enough time to check in your luggage if you have any, go through security, and then find your boarding gates. So you want to make sure that you give yourself enough time to check in your luggage. Arriving later than you're supposed to, some airlines have a cutoff 2 hours of checking in your luggage, will not allow you to check in that luggage, which means that you cannot take that luggage with you at the end. So making sure you're giving yourself enough time. After you checked in, you would go through security, having now your boarding pass. Security is known as TSA, or Transportation Security Administration, and they're a federal agency that they're there to have to see the safety of all this everyone traveling on a federal transportation, so like the airplane. What to expect. TSA agents are not there to be your friend. They are not there to make conversation, and they are often not very nice. So just kind of something to keep in mind. I know I'm always used to smiling and saying hello. So these were people not there to be my friend. Everyone at TSA is generally a hot mess. They're going through security. There's a lot of people lying, a lot of people yelling. There's a lot of people happening. There's large crowds. So it can be a little bit overwhelming, but just know everyone's a hot mess there. You're not through it alone, and you'll get past this. Often into security, you will need to remove your shoes, some jackets, hats, medals, watches. So just be wary or be cautious that may happen. You will be going through some x-rays. There's different types of x-rays, but you will be passing through those without your belongings. And as I previously mentioned earlier, you will if you do plan to have a water bottle, you cannot go with any water bottle filled. I'm sorry, you cannot go with any water bottles filled with water passing there. If you take a water bottle, you can fill it out. You can fill it up after security. But if you have, for example, a closed water bottle with you, you will need to drink all that water, get rid of all that water before you pass through security. You will not be allowed with that water bottle, filled water bottle drink. There is a TSA list of all the restricted items that they have laid out for you. I will send this list with you to you on that PDF resource once that with the recording of this webinar. And it's just to make it a little bit easier so you know more or less what to expect, what you can and cannot take. I have some security tips, and it's just simply to make it easier to hopefully make your process a little bit more smoother. Like I mentioned earlier, you do want to plan ahead for liquids and allowances. I covered earlier. It's always easier to have these on top of your carry-on and on your backpack. Easier access. You don't want to have them stuffed in the middle of your suitcase and then you have to remove them. So you're kind of digging in and have to reorganize. So just having them conveniently located would make the process much smoother for yourself and for the TSA agents as well as those behind you. Similarly, you want to have your electronics or your laptop, your tablets, anything accessible. That way you're not having to reorganize everything afterwards. I do have some suggestions or some tips on how to dress to make the process easier. These are by no means what you're prohibited from wearing. You are allowed to wear these. It just would make the process easier. So for example, having slip-on shoes would be much easier than having laced up boots and having to lace off and lace back on. You would need to remove your belt. So if you're simply going on without it already, then that already saves you time. It's much easier to remove a sweater with the zipper versus having to take off your hoodie, or your hoodie comes off, so does your shirt. So then we're giving everyone a show. So it's just easier to have a sweater in that sense. But of course, if you want to wear a hoodie, that's totally okay. Similarly, you will need to remove your hats. So it's easier to just have no hat already as opposed to having to take it on and off. I know when I wear hats, it's because I'm having a bad hair day. So if I have to take that off, I'm showing everyone my bad hair day, then that's not very good for me. So just some tips. Of course, you by no means need to follow them. Some other tips, some other quick notes. If you are traveling while transgender, the National Center for Trans Equality does provide travelers with a guide on how to navigate this airport security. Additionally, if you have a disability, TSA provides a notification cards for you to show the TSA agents of your medical condition or your disability. Once again, I will include this travel guide in that PDF resource that I will be sending you with this recording, but just some quick notes. So just some other quick notes about additional screening. You do want to make sure you're keeping calm. You're not making any jokes about bombs. You're not making any jokes about weapons or terrorism. TSA does take this seriously. If you feel like you've been mistreated in the screening process by TSA, one thing I would recommend is just staying calm, being respectful, and asking to speak with the supervisor. Do not express your frustration. Do not threaten. Do not yell at the TSA agents. This can result in criminal charges. So making sure you're keeping calm. But of course, you can always file a formal complaint. It can be done online with the TSA directly or with Flight Rights. It's a specific app for kind of these complaints. So just make sure that that's a resource available to you. So now we checked in our luggage, we passed through security, and now we're looking to find our gate to board this aircraft. So this will be called going to your departure gate. The gates are often listed on your boarding pass as well as your boarding time. Of course, I would always strongly recommend checking the flight monitors once you pass security. You would look up your flight based on the confirmation code or your flight number. And then that gives you the most up-to-date. So for example, up-to-date gate, up-to-date departure boarding times. These do change, and sometimes they're announced on the overhead. Because it's so noisy, sometimes you may not be able to hear it. So just consistently checking these monitor flights is a good way to know your boarding gate and your boarding time. Once you find your gate, you would sit tight. If you find a local Starbucks, get some coffee, relax until it's time for you to board your gate and enter the aircraft. So once you've entered the aircraft, you had your flight, you are now at your destination, you're ready to enjoy your city abroad experience. But before we can do so, we have to go through customs and border protection. Through customs and passport protection, otherwise known as passport control, is where once you exit the aircraft, you would have to clear immigration based on your citizenship. So for example, in the image we have on screen, we see that anyone who has a UK or a European Union passport would go to the right, and anyone who has any other passport that's not UK or European Union will go to the left. It's very important that once you exit the aircraft that you are following signs or reading the signs, and you're not just following the crowd. You don't want to follow the crowd that everyone, the majority, without knowing we're European citizens, and now you're in a line that does not belong to you. Now you have to exit the line and go to the back of the line of where you're supposed to be. But making sure that you're following the appropriate signs and not the crowd. When you're at passport control, you will clear immigration. So this will happen anytime you're arriving at a foreign country or arriving from a foreign country. Anyone who's traveling domestically will not need to clear immigration. This includes anyone who's traveling to another state. So once you're clearing immigration, otherwise known as customs, you will complete a custom declaration form and you will speak with a customs officer. So for customs declaration, they're also known as entry forms. This lets the country know who you are, what you're bringing to the country, how much money you're bringing, and your most recent trips, of course, as any other information that they may ask. These entry forms are distributed by flight attendants on the flights, or they can also be found on that passport control line that you may be waiting. This custom declaration or entry form, they will be presented to the border control officer. So we want to make sure that you're being honest. Any kind of lying can lead to serious consequences. So make sure you're being honest. This is for the safety of yourself and for others. Some airports do have an electronic version of this form that can be completed as opposed to a physical form. So as we can see on screen here, this is more or less what they look like here in the United States. And this replaced that physical form. The instructions are provided on screen. They will ask the exact same questions, just electronically. Once all the questions have been completed, they will take your photo and they will print the customs declaration form for you. You will take this once again to speak with a customs officer. In all times, you will speak with the customs officers. Similar to the TSA agents, they are not there to be your friend. Their demeanor can often be very serious, but they are there for the safety of yourself and for others. They will review your travel documents that includes your passport, your visa, your custom forms. They will ask questions as they deem necessary. The question that they most frequently ask is, why are you here? For how long? Where will you be staying? They can stamp your passport, and they may also take your fingerprint or your picture. It does vary per location as well as per officer, but you will be asked questions and they will be reviewing your travel documents. Usually in these areas, there's not very good service, whether it's data or Wi-Fi, but either way, electronics in this area is prohibited. So just make sure you're wary of that. As mentioned, office demeanor is not always friendly. They are there for the safety of yourself and for others. So after you clear immigration, we're going to go ahead and follow signs to baggage claim if you checked in a luggage. If not, then you will follow the signs for exit. The carousel is where your luggage would be going in circles in order for you to obtain it and just go throughout your day. The carousel numbers would be provided in two ways. In some cases, they're provided by a flight attendant on the plane before exiting. They let you know your baggage will be available on carousel number 4, for example, or they will be indicated on the carousel screens at that baggage claim area. You do also want to be wary of second level inspection. After you receive your baggage claim, let's say you're exiting the airport, there can be some officers there to do another inspection of your items, and it is done at random, and it's just to further ensure safety. So if you see some officers giving you some looks, it could be because they may be considering you for a random inspection, or they may be counting down those individuals. So that can happen. So just a few other notes. Let's say, for example, you cleared immigration, you have your luggage. What do you do now? So you always want to make sure you're following your arrival instructions. If you're meeting host university staff at the airport, make sure you go to where you're supposed to, follow the signs, or ask any airport staff for assistance. If you must report to the university housing or the university itself, make sure you follow signs for transportation. If it's in a foreign language, they usually have, for example, a train symbol or a taxi symbol. That way you more or less know where to go. And like I mentioned, always follow your arrival instructions. If you have a connecting flight, so for example, that layover, the process can vary. In some cases, you may exit the plane and simply just walk to another terminal gate within that same hallway, for example. And other times you will need to clear customs, you will need to pick up your luggage, and then you will need to restart the process of checking in your luggage, going through security, and then again boarding your gate. So it really does depend on the respective airline. So you want to make sure that you're always following the signs or listening in the overhead of what's being told. I do want to emphasize that it's always okay to ask for help. Do not be timid, do not be shy. Something I always tell myself, specifically at an airport, is that I'm never going to see these people again. So there's no reason why I should be shy and not ask for help when I know that if I don't know where I'm going, I could get lost and something else could happen that can complicate other issues. So it's always okay to ask for help. Please do not be afraid to do so. I would actually strongly encourage you to do so. So just a few things that I want to discuss. First and foremost are jet lag. We landed, we cleared customs, and now we're at our destination. Jet lag is when you're traveling into different time zones, and it can affect you physically or mentally. You may feel exhausted, you may not be hungry, you may have some concentration or some memory issues. These are all side effects of that jet lag and traveling into a different time zone. So how to prepare for jet lag? If it's possible, I'd encourage you to arrive in daylight. So for example, let's say you arrive at 3 p.m., then you have the entire day to kind of explore a little bit, go to get some snacks, get some food. That way by 7, 8 p.m., you're tired, you're able to sleep, and that way you're slowly adjusting to that new schedule. So if possible, arrive during the daylight. You want to make sure you're staying hydrated before, during, and after your flight. Because you want to stay hydrated, you want to avoid alcohol, you want to avoid caffeine that can cause dehydration. You may want to start adjusting your schedule to the new time zone before you depart. That can include, for example, let's say you're traveling 2 p.m. at Los Angeles time and abroad is now 6 or 3 a.m., then you may want to sleep during that flight to kind of more or less get adjusted. Finally, you may want to stay active during your plane. You may want to walk around. You may want to do a little bit of exercise. That's just kind of get yourself a little bit tired, that when you are at your destination, you're able to more or less adjust to that new time zone. So now adjusting to life and culture, when we think of traveling, we tend to associate it as an adventure, as something that's very positive. And most of the time it can be, but there are some times where we experience culture shock and it may not seem as positive. Culture shock is the feeling or experience of disorientation or discomfort, and that's when you're in an unfamiliar setting or an environment. This doesn't happen to anyone, but it can happen to anyone who travels, for example, from LA to New York or LA to Spain. There are 4 main stages of culture shock. We have the honeymoon stage. Here, the culture is new, it's exciting, and you're positively surprised by anything and everything that you see in your host country, and you're just having an amazing time. The second stage is crisis, where the realities of life, of where you're at, kind of start to sink in. You're in a different housing situation. You're not the same bed, not the same food. You're missing your family. You're missing your friends. And, reality just starts to kick in. So this may cause you to see all the negative aspects of your host culture, of your host university or host life. In the third stage, you are in the recovery stage. So here you start to hang out a little bit more with your classmates. You try to socialize a little bit more, you're more open to belonging. So here you're slowly getting the hang of what things are and this new environment, this new culture. Finally, we have the adjustment stage. So here you start to feel more connected and you eventually feel like you're starting to fit in. So you feel more comfortable and you have now adjusted to the new way of life. For steps number 5 through 8, sometimes culture shock is only associated when you're going abroad, but culture shock can also happen once you return back home. So for example, return back to LA and you have to readjust to life here after everything that you've learned. So this is known as reverse culture shock. This is actually what happened to myself. I did not experience steps 1 to 4, but I experienced rather steps 5 to 8 without knowing it. I didn't know how much I had learned or adapted to a new culture. Then when I came back to LA, I was like, whoa, this is not like, ew, I want to go back. So this is something to be wary of. So how to prepare for this your studying abroad experience and this possible culture shock. So first and foremost, you want to find your support group. Keep in mind that you may not be the only one feeling out of place. You're not the only one studying abroad. So there can be others like you who may be feeling the exact same thing that you are. So you want to try to meet new people, make new friends, socialize in a group that you feel supported. This does not only have to be with people who are abroad. You can create a support group of friends or family that are in LA. Create a communication plan of what time you should speak or what things you want to share. That way you still have that support, whether it be at your host university or back home. Second thing is you want to ask questions. You're in a new environment, you're with different groups of people who have different beliefs, they act differently, they have different types of food or different types of music. So just use this time to learn a little bit more about others and their environments. This will expand your global education, but also your understanding of others in different cultures. So asking questions can be a good tool to kind of use also in a different classroom setting. For example, they can bring you a little bit more outgoing when you come back to UCLA. Third, you want to be an open mind when you are receiving answers to these questions. They may not think the same way, or others may not think the same way we do. So it's very important not to jump into a conclusion or kind of voice your opinion right away. When we're in a different culture, it's very easy to step out of our comfort zone, or actually I would recommend stepping out of our comfort zone and taking in other ideas, other perspectives that you otherwise wouldn't have being here in the US or in your home city. So just keeping an open mind. Four, you want to set goals. So you want abroad for a reason, but what else can you gain from this experience? Goals don't have to be long-term. So for example, when I went abroad, my short-term goal was every week I would get something new at the grocery store. This was a new snack, a new frozen food, a new drink. So some things I enjoyed, some things I didn't, but this was part of my experience. So this helped me enjoy a little bit more. So that was a short-term goal that I had. So five, you want to be patient. Not only will you have to wait for your flight or train or for your exam test results, but you will need patience to adapt to a new culture and a new environment. So you're not expected to make friends right away. You're not expected to learn a new language right away, but you want to sit back, you want to enjoy your time abroad and just take it all in day by day. Finally, very quickly, I'll go through this notion of Americans abroad. So when we're traveling outside of the US, it's very common for people to identify you as an American before any other identity. So for example, I'm Mexican American, but others may be, you are American, and totally disregarding my Mexican identity. So it's very easy for others to just think of you as American first. If you are a person of color, you will likely get questions about whether or not you are truly from America. So people may not think of you as American, which can be upsetting if you identify as such. So some tips to overcome this notion, first and foremost, is to come prepared. Do your research on that history, that culture, where you're going, your host country, and its relationship with the US. Most countries, they follow US politics very closely, and it's very common for nationals or locals there to want to engage in a conversation or debate about the US. If you are confronted by stereotypes, think about how to respond in a thoughtful, respectful way that opens dialogue about your different cultures. So perhaps the person has never been to the US before, has never met someone from the US. So you want to make sure you could be a cultural ambassador in this case. So want to make sure that you're replying in a thoughtful manner and open to dialogue as opposed to just voicing your opinion right away and shutting them down. So with that said, we have a couple minutes. I'm happy to take any questions. I'm hoping I was able to condense as a lot of information as digestible as possible. I do have a couple of questions and comments in the chat, so I'm going to go ahead and begin with those. But of course, if you have any, just bring them in. In the meantime, I'm going to have a thank you slide just because it does have my email. If you have any questions and you need to go, feel free to send me an email at any time. I do want to reiterate that this webinar is recorded and it will be emailed to you within a day or two, along with the PDF resource of any kind of links that I mentioned throughout the session that may be helpful to you in your pre-departure process. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and begin addressing some questions. There was a question that I missed earlier of what does +2 refer to? So that +2 or that +1 when you're booking a ticket refers to the amount of days that you would need to be adding to your travel time. So if you have a +2, that means you would be traveling for an additional 2 days than expected. Will we be able to access recording after the meeting? Yes, I will be sending that within a day or two to anyone who RSVP'd. If we have a very long layover and leave the airport during the during the layover, for example, visit a family or city? Do we have to get our check bag before leaving the airport? Very good question. It depends on the airline that and the flight that you have. In some cases, you simply walk out of the airport and you don't need to worry about your luggage. Your luggage will get to the destination. In other times, they will require you to pick up that luggage and then you're welcome to check it in at a different time. So it really depends on that flight. So making sure you're speaking with the airline representative on how that layover may be ahead of time. I'm an international student. Do I need to email DASHU Center to get documentation or anything? You definitely want to connect with the DASHU Center for any policies of international student traveling. They may have some restrictions or may some policies that we are not aware of, but you definitely want to connect with them just to make sure that your student visa, if you have one, is up to date and there's not any policies or that we should be wary of. So definitely connect with them just to make sure that we're not missing anything. So, hi, I already bought my ticket, but I wasn't able to get insurance refundable or changeable for my flight because it is international. I bought my ticket through Expedia, but they shared that they cannot help me add protection or give me my ticket number. Please, how do I contact an international airline, more specifically Rolling Airlines? Thank you. My biggest resource will be connecting with Expedia. The Expedia website contact services or their help desk, letting them know that you purchased a ticket and you want to connect with the airline specifically. If you cannot find the airline contact information on Google, for example, then contact the agency in which you purchased your ticket in order for them to help you connect with that airline specifically. Um, it's always a resource. I hope that's helpful, but definitely connect with Expedia themselves. Awesome. You are very welcome. Okay. How do you overcome the fear of traveling alone to a new country? That's a very good question. Actually, I'll speak, I can't speak on behalf of others, but I'll speak on behalf of myself. When I went to the Netherlands, I actually, I kind of just put myself in an airplane without really thinking about much. But I think it really came down to my excitement of studying abroad. I boarded the plane on my own. I've never traveled internationally, so that I think that was a first. I kind of just followed the signs. And when I got there, actually, I didn't know, but the majority of those on my flight were students on my study abroad program. So I actually met them after the flight. So it looks like we were on this flight for 12 hours and we didn't even know each other. So you don't feel like you need to talk to anyone. Don't feel like you have to befriend anyone or travel with someone. I always think it's a very rewarding or eye-opener experience when you are traveling on your own. Because I was able to get there on my own on my destination, I was motivated to travel independently outside of my study abroad program on my own. So I had that international travel. So I think my just biggest advice, speaking from personal experience, is don't let being alone make the best out of you. That's not what it should be. It's about the experience and knowing you have a goal to get to and then really getting there. Like I mentioned, I don't know my exact thoughts were when I boarded that flight, but I just knew I had to get there and then I would figure out once I got there, which I did. So hopefully that's helpful. Do you suggest solo travel after the study abroad program? Um, As a personal recommendation, I would say if you have the time and the means to, yes. um, I studied abroad for 6 months and I actually stayed 2 weeks after just so I can explore a little bit more. I also did some solo traveling during my program. So like I mentioned, it's an eye-opener experience. And sometimes, when you're traveling in groups, it's very hard to accommodate what the majority of the group wants. So if you're traveling on your own, you're doing what you want at what time, you're eating what you want, seeing what you want. So I would highly recommend it. You actually learn a lot more about yourself as well, especially that fear aspect. You learn to just kind of let that go and just kind of go for things. Of course, always being responsible, making sure you're staying safe. But I personally would recommend any kind of solo travel. But of course, if you are solo traveling, let your family and friends know, that way there's a record of where you're going. How safe is it to take a taxi from the airport to the location you will be studying abroad? Oftentimes, I would say it's pretty safe. I personally never traveled on a taxi abroad. I always took the local metros for finance reasons, but that was my own personal experience. But if you're getting a taxi specifically at a taxi station from the airport, it should be relatively safe. But of course, something you may want to do if you're considering just the safety of any place that you're going to, you may want to connect with alumni or program coordinators to see any kind of safety recommendations or safety precautions that you should take. But always connecting with alumni, I think that's a good way to kind of more or less know what you should expect there as well. Awesome. It is 2 minutes after, so I do want to be mindful of your time. If you do have any questions, please shoot me an email. You're also more than welcome to join our virtual drop-in advising. We host these Monday through Thursdays, or you're also welcome to email our general inbox. I wish you all the best to add your study abroad program if you are traveling, whether the summer or the fall. Like I mentioned, if you have any other questions, please let me know. And thank you all for attending today. Have a great rest of your day.